welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my wrap up for the month of May. So in the month of May, I did manage to read 18 books. I think I DNF'd 2 books, so again, as usual, we'll start with my DNFs, and then I'll go through all the books that I read in the order in which I enjoyed them, so by ratings, basically. The first book that I DNF'd in May was Milk-Fed by Melissa Broder. Melissa Broder was the creator behind the So Sad Today Twitter account back in the day. I don't know if she still posts on there. I'm really not sure. I'm not on Twitter anymore, or X, whatever. But that's how she got popular. She would post poetry to Twitter, and then she published a book of poems. She published The Pisces, which I read, and I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. I remember enjoying it, but it was very weird girl fiction. And then Milk-Fed is, as far as I got, which was not very far, it's about a girl who is, I think discussing, I think she starts either having a craving for breast milk, or it's an analysis of her not having had breast milk as a baby or something like that. I don't really know where it goes. It's a very detailed account of her anorexia in the beginning, and it's basically, it reads like a food diary of her talking about how she minimizes her calories, and I personally can't read that, so it was not for me. Did not finish that, did not get very far at all. But just a warning, if you are interested in reading that book, your mileage may vary. Okay, and then I also DNF'd Fresh by Margot Wood. I keep getting her confused with Margaret Atwood, my bad. Margot Wood. And this is a YA contemporary book set at college, so it's called Fresh because it's this girl's freshman year. And to be honest, I just couldn't get into the writing style. I also only have this as an ebook, and this book has footnotes, but the way that ebooks format the footnotes, it meant that all the footnotes were at the end of the chapter, so if I actually wanted to reference the footnotes, I would have to scroll through to the end of the chapter, read the footnote, and then scroll back to where I was, and I just wasn't going to do it. It also involves a lot of fourth wall breakage on behalf of the narrator, and I just wasn't into it. So I read 2 chapters and then decided that it was not going to be for me. The lowest book that I rated this month, I actually gave it 2.5 stars, and that was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. So this is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling, and it follows, it's set in this fantasy world, and the main character is non-binary, I think, and they are a soldier. They get notice that, I think it's a childhood friend of theirs, their childhood friend's sister is ill, and so they go to this big house. It's just weird things are happening in the house, and they also notice that there are these rabbits around that seem they see the rabbit die, and then the rabbit can continue to walk around after it's died, so something weird is happening. I didn't love this book. I don't really love T. Kingfisher, I'm learning. A lot of people really like her writing. I'm really happy for you. It's just not really for me. So I read The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, which is a cosmic horror book, and I remember just feeling the stakes never felt very high. Something about the whimsical nature of the writing style with the subject matter didn't really work for me. I did enjoy, I'm not gonna remember what it's called now, but it has the girl wearing a green dress on the cover. I liked that book the best. It's a twisted fairy tale retelling kind of thing. Not retelling, but a twisted fairy tale. And I think T. Kingfisher's writing style for me works better in that realm than it does in actual horror. Cause something about the whimsical writing tone with the horrific things, it just doesn't, it doesn't compute in my brain. So that's probably an unpopular opinion. I know that T. Kingfisher is a beloved author. I just don't really love her stuff. So 2.5 stars. I rounded up to 3 on Goodreads, but not my favorite thing. Next up is a 3-star that I had this month, which was Love War Stories by Evelise Rodriguez. And this is a collection of short stories. And to be honest, most of them were just okay. So the premise is mostly set in this town in Massachusetts called Holyoke, where there's a large population, I guess, of Puerto Rican people. And I don't know if the author is from there, and that's why she wanted to write this collection, but each of the stories is a different version of a love story, but it's also kind of heartbreak stories about Puerto Rican girls in this town, basically. And I think one of the stories is actually set back in Puerto Rico, and one of the stories I think is set in New York City, but for the most part, that's the premise. There's definitely interesting stories in here, but none of them were amazing and my favorite thing. And also, I don't know, I think sometimes short stories have good ideas and then can't whatever it is can't be fully developed within the confines of a short story. And so I think that happened for some of these for me, where it just didn't ever really feel like I was reading something complete. Didn't hate them at all, but just not my favorite thing. Now I have a couple of 3.5 stars to talk about. The first 3.5 star I want to talk about is Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker, which is a new release this year. I really thought I was gonna love this book, and for whatever reason, I just didn't love it. So the premise of this one is it's this Chinese American woman who's living, Korjang. She's living in New York City. It's during the pandemic, and at the very beginning of the book, she's with her sister. They're like masked up and ready to get on a train, and they experience some xenophobic, anti-Chinese, anti-Asian, really, harassment, and her sister ends up getting pushed in front of a train by this guy who is also wearing a mask, and that's like a big part of the story, is that like she doesn't know who this guy is, but she keeps like seeing him everywhere. Her sister dies, and she, a few months later, is a crime scene cleaner. So like after murders or suicides, or sometimes they'll hire them for like hoarding situations, but like there are specific cleaners who are like contracted maybe by the police department. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's her and these two other people who end up getting assigned all of these different murder scenes or like suicide scenes, whatever, in New York City, in Chinatown, and they start discovering bats at the scenes. And I'm gonna explain it to you because I'd never heard this before, but apparently bat eater is something like, there was a rumor when COVID started that it started because someone in China ate a bat and caught COVID from that. And that's why this book is called that. I did not know that until reading this book. I'd never heard that before. But so there's lots of like gore scenes, but then it ends up being that there's a serial killer. And that was a plotline that it kind of lost me. I just felt like there was so much happening. There's also like paranormal aspects of this, because the main character feels like she's being haunted by her sister's ghost. And I personally wish that it had either been the haunting of the ghost and figuring out how to get rid of the ghost, or a serial killer and figuring out who the serial killer is. I felt like there was too much happening, and it took away from my overall enjoyment of the whole book. I still thought like the book was well written. I would read more from this author. I enjoyed the, I thought the perspective of a crime scene cleaner was a very unique perspective. Again, if you were gonna do like a serial killer story, or, but for me, I just didn't like the mix. It just felt like it felt like too much was going on. It felt a little too chaotic. I think if you liked the second season of American Horror Story, you might like this. Specifically because I didn't like that season because there was too much going on. So if that was okay for you, then I don't think you'd have a problem with this. I think this really is just a personal, like, I would have preferred a more refined, like simpler plot instead of all of the different, it just felt like too many elements. So I did like that book, but I'm not like, it's not gonna be top of mind. Similarly, I read Alat's Way by Darcy Little Badger in May. This is a young adult fantasy book, and it's set in an alternate version of the United States where there's magic. And so the fantasy elements were part of what was hard for me to like get my mind around, because I kind of thought that it was going to be like a little bit magical realism, but it ends up being like real fantasy, and that was confusing. I don't know why I thought that it was going to be, I guess because it's not like super high fantasy, but like the main character has a ghost dog, and like she and her family can like bring people back from the dead, or things back from the dead, but they don't bring people back from the dead because it causes all kinds of problems. And at the beginning of the book, she has a cousin die in an accident, and she gets this vision of him where he's like asking her to figure out what happened to him, and then the rest of the book is like the mystery around that. And parts of this book I really enjoyed. Like I really liked the like cultural elements because she is Native American, and it like talks about her like culturally. I also really liked the like spookiness of this town that they're in. I'm gonna say a complaint that everyone else already said on Goodreads, so I don't really like, this didn't bother me that much because I was like made aware of it ahead of time because I had like seen some reviews and heard this before. Similar to Pet by Akwaeke Emeze, the main character is supposed to be 17, but she reads like she's like 12. And I find that a little problematic. She is asexual, and that's like discussed in the book, but I don't think that makes you like a childlike. Like that I didn't love. I just felt like she just read very young. Like even if you told me she was like 13, 14, I probably would have been like, okay, so she's a little immature, but she's that age. But having her be a senior in high school and compete with the way that she acted, the way that she talked about things, the way that she like experienced and interacted with the world and with like her parents, with her friends, it was just kind of odd. So not a bad book by any means. I really enjoyed this book, and I think I would like, I don't know, it's a book that I might consider like revisiting at some point, but I didn't love it. if that makes sense. Next, I'm going to talk about some 4-star books that I had. These are all books that I really, really enjoyed, but for whatever reason did not get 5 stars. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. So many people love this book, and I do see why. This is a general fiction book about an older woman who works at an aquarium as a like cleaner, and it's her relationship with this octopus named Marcellus. And Marcellus gets some point of view chapters, and because octopuses, I don't know, are supposed to be very like intelligent. Essentially, he knows that he should only live like 4 years, and he like counts the summers at the aquarium, so he knows that he's like at the end of his life. And he's figured out how to get out of his tank and like get little snacks. And the way that he ends up bonding with her is because one day he's out of his tank trying to find this like specific snack that he likes in the aquarium at night when she's cleaning, and he gets caught in something, and she has to like rescue him and put him back into his tank. She has this like family drama thing. So I think her husband has died, and then they had a son, and I think something happened to their son where he died when he was like in high school or in college or something, very young. And so she's got a lot of like family tragedy, and she and Marcellus bond. And then there's also like a new guy that comes to work at the aquarium, and like it's just about like all of the different relationships that happen. And then there's the added bonus of Marcellus being the like go-between to like facilitate these friendships and relationships, and he's an octopus, which is adorable. I will say Cameron is the name of the other boy who ends up working there. I can't remember what happens. So he like breaks up with his girlfriend and has to move out of their apartment, doesn't have anywhere else to stay, needs a job. So he like ends up in this town and finds out that there's an aquarium job opening. Oh, it's because the main lady, I think, breaks her foot falling or something, so she can't work for a couple of weeks. And so he takes over her job for those weeks while she's out, and then they end up like working together, I think is what ends up happening. It's not a romance, so if that's what you were thinking, that's not what it is. But I didn't like Cameron's point of view that much. Like, I thought he was very annoying, very whiny, very like self-centered. Just, he wasn't my favorite character. I loved Marcellus's chapters though, and I liked the lady, I can't remember her name, but I liked her chapters as well. I did think that the twist, if you will, was fairly obvious from the beginning, but I don't think that matters in a book like this. Like, it's not like a mystery, okay? It's just the drama. But 4 stars for that one, very enjoyable. I also gave 4 stars. This is something that I reread. I reread Deadline by Mira Grant, which is a first book in a trilogy. It's like a zombie book. I'm going to talk about all 3 of them. I think I gave all of them 4 stars, if I'm not mistaken. So it's Feed is the first. Sorry, that was the reread. Deadline is the second, and then Blackout is the third and final book in that series. There's also a couple of like bonus books. Like, I think she re-released the first book, but from the other character's point of view, and then she has a short story that is an alternate ending to the first book that I've already read. It's called Fed. But the premise of this series is it's set in the future, and in this world in 2014 there was a zombie outbreak, and so in the future there's this virus called Kellis Amberley, which every human has because it was injected into people to like cure cancer, the common cold, like all these ailments. But once you die, you reanimate because it like turns you into a zombie. So everyone has it, and as soon as you like die, they have to make sure that they kill you again or like shoot you in the head before you can reanimate and hurt people. In this future, for whatever reason, like I think it's because when this was all going on, the national like media centers weren't reporting on it, but bloggers were. And so now in the future, bloggers are like the only trusted news source because everything else is like fake news. It's kind of funny to think about. And then this book is really like political dystopian, I will say. So the premise of the first book is that this group of bloggers, which is Sean and Georgia Mason, who are step siblings, Buffy Maisonier, they're all named after these people who were very instrumental in helping save the world from the actual apocalypse in the first place. And then this is like 2040, so like 35 years since this. These kids, this is all they've known, but they're like in their 20s, and they get hired to be the official news crew for this guy who's running for president, whose name I'm not gonna remember. As a part of that, they're like following him around to all these different campaign stops, and then of course things happen, and he's got like a political opponent, and there's also like fringe groups that are like politically opposed to different things, and there's drama, and there's like gore and violence because this is like kind of a horror dystopian series. But anyways, I think these books are really fun. I really like the character relationships as they develop. I also like the first book in particular is very emotionally impactful for me. There are some like really hard-hitting things that happen. And then the second book goes a little off the rails, I won't lie. But then the third book is, I think, a solid conclusion to the whole series. I feel like I can't talk about what happens in those books, but it's good. It's, if you like a dystopian or like even fantasy that has like a very that's heavy on like the political machinations. If you like humor in your books. I know some people, like Becca from Becca in the Books, talks about how she doesn't really like funny books. I don't think she would like this series because it is very reliant on some humorous elements. But yeah, and also, I don't know, I just think it's fun. I love zombies though, personally. I'm a big zombie girl. I've been a big zombie girl since like the Resident Evil stuff. So your mileage may vary, but I really enjoy these books. I think they're very fun. And I'm very glad that I finally finished out the trilogy because I read the first one originally a long time ago. That's what I was gonna say. That's why I reread it, because I hadn't read it in so long. But next book I gave 4 stars was All Fours by Miranda July, which I do talk about in a reading blog that I did recently, so I will link that for you. This is a contemporary literary fiction book about an artist who is struggling with like her next piece. So she decides that she's going to take this cross-country trip by herself to like really marinate in her art and get her next big thing going. And at home she has a husband and a child, and it's a very introspective book. So like you're in her head the whole time and seeing what she's doing. In the first third, she takes this road trip, but actually what she does is she drives to a town that's like less than an hour away from where she lives, and she gets a motel room and she renovates the motel room for 2 weeks. She like develops this crush thing on a guy that she meets immediately, and like they kind of have like an emotional affair. And then she goes back to her real life and she's like dealing with the consequences of this, basically. It's a very interesting book. I enjoyed her inner monologue. I loved the first third. I thought it was so interesting, different, like just like emotionally complex. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like very reflective on herself and like what she wants in her life and what she feels like her life is, and like her marriage and how her marriage has changed since she had kids, and like all the things that she didn't want for herself but that now she has and is like grateful for, but like does she want this forever? And it's just it's very interesting. It's a little woo-woo, so if you like woo-woo things, you might like the latter part of the book more than I did. I loved the ending. I felt like the ending was very like cathartic to read, but it was such an like a fascinating like picture of someone else's like life and brain and the way that their world is and the way that they view their world. And for that, I really enjoyed it. Like I thought it was very poignant. I don't know if that's the right word, but I did really enjoy that one. Another book I gave 4 stars was All Together by Brill Harper. This is a throuple romance, okay? And this, I would say, veers closer to like erotica. There's not a whole lot going on outside of the couple, the throuple. But it's about this girl who's in college, and her freshman year roommate is kind of psycho, and she's telling her like best friend about it, who goes to a different school. And her best friend ends up telling her brother about it. And so the best friend's brother and his roommate, who are 2 very hot jocks, come and get the main character and say, like, you can live with us. We have an extra room. I don't remember why they have an extra room, but we have an extra room. You're going to live with us because we don't want you living with this roommate anymore. And then all 3 of them develop a relationship together. And most of the book is focused on them exploring their relationship together. So I liked it because I read that Elle Kennedy book where she has the relationship with 2 boys, that I liked more. But that book had more like outside of the relationship. That's why I liked it more. But I read this one because I saw somewhere that this one, the boys are also in a relationship, whereas in the Elle Kennedy one, they're kind of like, they're both in the relationship with the girl. And it seems like they're like platonic together, if that makes sense. This one, no, and I was curious to read that, so I did. But again, it's very close. I would say it's closer to erotica than romance, so your mileage may vary. There's like a lot of scenes, and that's most of the book. It's like 220 pages, and I would say probably 120 of them are smut. But I did enjoy it. I had a great time reading it, and I'm glad that I read it. Another book that I gave 4 stars is I'm Not Jessica Chang by Anne Liang. And this is another new release. It's a little bit fantastical, but it's a YA contemporary mostly. And it's about a girl a teenage girl, her name's Jenna, and her cousin Jessica is like the it girl at school. She's the smartest girl, she's the prettiest girl, she's the girl everyone likes. Jenna's really jealous of her. Jenna doesn't get into Harvard, Jessica does get into Harvard. And Jessica makes a wish on a shooting star that she can be Jessica. Or Jenna makes a wish on a shooting star that she can be Jessica. I don't know if I said that right the first time. So she does, and then she's just like in her cousin's body and in her cousin's life, and it's one of those books where it's like she's sort of figuring out that maybe she doesn't want all the things that Jessica has, and also she's seeing herself disappear. So like it starts out where she goes to her actual parents' house, which are now Jessica's aunt and uncle, and they don't really know where she is, but they don't really seem to care. No one at school seems to really remember her. Was really into painting, but like all of her paintings are like disappearing or being covered up by like other paint, and people can't remember who made them. And so it's a very like weird book. And then there's also a boy who Jenna liked, who was like a childhood friend of her and Jessica, and he's the only one who really remembers her. So they're like trying to work together to find her, if that makes sense. It was good. It wasn't like an all-time favorite, but I really enjoyed it. Like I had a really great time reading that one, and I would recommend it if you're interested. The last book that I gave 4 stars was The Deeper the Water, The Uglier the Fish by Katia Epikina. Okay, and this book I also read partially in that blog, but I just finished it this past week. I guess I finished Bat Eater after it, but I almost finished this last. I've been trying to read this book since February, but I kept losing my hold from the library. Very annoying. But this book is about sisters, kind of. So it's kind of hard to explain. So the premise is there's these 2 sisters who are 14 and 16, I believe, and they live in Louisiana with their mom. Their mom tries to commit suicide. And so she's institutionalized, and the girls have to go live with their dad in New York City. He's a writer. And all of the book is told in very short snippets from everyone's perspective about, it's like in the future, about the events of this summer and like about this writer. And as you read it, it's like about the writer, his relationship with his ex-wife, who is Marianne, the mother of the girls, and then about his relationship with the girls. And this book ends up getting really disturbing. It's very like, it's one of those books where as I was reading it, I was like, it almost sounds like this thing is about to happen. And then lo and behold, that thing did happen. I would say it's almost a spoiler to say what it is. So I'm not going to say it right here because I know not a lot of people love being spoiled, but if there are things that trigger you that you cannot read, I would look up the trigger warnings for this one because I feel like it could be very difficult for some people. I was fascinated by this. It was like a car wreck you couldn't look away from. It's also, I find, really beautifully written. I think this author has one other book out. This book came out in 2018. I want to say her other book came out last year. Don't quote me on that, obviously. But I want to read her new book because of how I felt about this one. But it's really well written, but it's also like kind of slow to start. Like the pacing, it was hard to get into for me, which is why I kept letting my hold lapse and not like reading it a lot. Also, as we all know, I've been struggling with like physically reading. So that was part of the problem too. I didn't have an audiobook of this one. I just had an ebook, and there are just things that I would rather do than read an ebook on my phone. I don't know. So that was the last 4-star that I gave this month. I did have a 4.5 star, and that was The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I rounded this up on Goodreads. I don't know if I will keep it that way. This is a very beat up copy, by the way, but this book is about a woman named Evelyn Hugo who is a like golden age actress, and it's her life story, but it's her life story as she's telling it through this journalist named Monique. Is that her name? And she's basically telling Monique about her 7 husbands, but also the love of her life. And Monique, she's gonna give Monique this book deal if she can like tell her story, but she doesn't want the story told until after she dies. I think is like part of the deal as well, because she's I think she's in her like 80s or something, so she knows that it's coming, but she wants to tell her story finally. And then you've also, as it goes along, you find out why Monique is the one she's telling the story to. And I did not think I was going to be surprised by that, but I ended up being surprised by what it was. Of course, as soon as it like starts, that part of the story started being told, I was like, oh no, but it was very good. I really like this book. I think part of the reason I wouldn't say it was 5 stars for me is I felt like it was a little long. I've heard people say that they really like this book because it, like, Evelyn Hugo feels like a real person. This is the second Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I've read. I liked this one better than Daisy Jones and the Six. Both of them have a similar style though, where it's like celebrities retrospectively telling their life story to journalists, basically through interviews. I don't know, I liked Daisy Jones and the Six as well, but I didn't like the ending of it really at all. But I don't necessarily feel as connected to the characters that she writes as I think a lot of other people do. Like, I think that's where she shines, and that's where a lot of people like really connect with her work. And I don't know that I connect with it as deeply as a lot of the people that I see review these books. Definitely not a bad book. I definitely understand why people love these books. I just don't know that it's like, that I'm a stan for Taylor Jenkins Reid. But also, I'm almost wondering if like, they're just so hyped that they would never meet that hype, even if I did like absolutely love them. Do you know what I mean? Much to contemplate. Next time I'm going to talk about all the 5 stars that I gave this month. And I do have a couple. I have, yeah, like 5 or 6. I have several 5 stars. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is That Summer by Jennifer Weiner. I love this book. Like, I think this is going to go on like my top books of the year because of how much I loved it. This is another contemporary book. It's similar to like Ellen Hildebrand's style of writing. So if you don't really love that, it's like chick-lit-y women's fiction, contemporary fiction, but it's about this woman, these 2 women, and how do I describe it? So one of them is named Diana and the other one's named Daisy. And Daisy starts getting these emails that are meant to be sent to this woman named Diana. And it turns out Daisy is like a nickname for Diana. Her name is also Diana. So the 2, because she's been getting these emails meant for this other Diana, they meet up in New York City. And Daisy's like kind of blown away by Diana's life because Diana has this like, I don't remember what she does for work, but she's got like kind of a high-powered career. She's not married, she doesn't have kids, but she's very like sophisticated to Daisy. And Daisy is this younger woman who's married to like an older man. I don't know how much older than, I think she's in her like late 20s and he's in his like early 40s maybe. Hi, I'm editing this and I actually think Daisy's supposed to be in like her early 30s and he's in like his mid 40s to late 40s is what I think it is. Because they have a teenage daughter who's like 15 maybe, 16. And she would have been like 20 when she had her. So mid-30s. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope so. I don't know. It's like a 15-year age gap somewhere in there. And she also married him and dropped out of college to be with him. And then they have kids. At least, I think they have at least 2. I don't remember. But they have a couple kids. And so she's just like kind of a housewife to this guy. And he's like super well off. So she's not like struggling or anything. But she's just like kind of bored in her life, if you will. And she's kind of living vicariously through her friend Diana. And then also, you're getting flashbacks of Diana when she was a teenager and she was a nanny one summer on Cape Cod, I think. And certain things happened to her. And like, you find out that Diana is not who she said she is to Daisy. And also like why this is happening. I love this book. I thought it was so well written. I really liked both Diana and Daisy as characters. I thought they were both very like interesting in their own right. I also really enjoyed the like use of flashbacks in the storytelling, which is something that I don't always love. But it really worked for me. This is the second book I think this year that I've talked about how much I love the dual timeline thing. It doesn't always work for me, but this book and then the one that I read, By Any Other Name by Jodi Picoult, both of them used dual timelines and I thought they were so like well done. And this one again, I like there wasn't a perspective that I liked more than the other. There wasn't a timeline that I wanted to be in more than the other. So I was just very happy to have both. And I love this book. I thought it was so great. If you haven't read it yet, highly recommend. I don't know when it came out, but I think a while ago. And the next book I gave 5 stars was One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. And this is a fantasy book with a romantic subplot, which is how I like my fantasy to be. I guess I haven't read that many like romantasy books, but like when it gets too romance heavy and that becomes the whole plot, I find that kind of boring. But the premise of this book is there's a woman who is like 19 or 20 and the magic system in this world is based on like almost like tarot cards where some people can like use certain powers from these cards and the cards themselves have power, but only certain people are able to like use that power, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm describing it well, but like, for example, there's a card that can make the holder more beautiful. And so the card does that regardless of whether that person can wield magic, but then some people can like use the cards, if that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but our main character has the ability to where when she touches the cards, she finds this out when she's a child, I think. When she touches the cards, she absorbs their power. And so she touches this one card that's called the Nightmare, I think, and he is absorbed into her. So now inside of her is this nightmare being who's like just always with her, and she's trying to figure out like what that is, what that means. But also in this world, magic users have different blood than everyone else, and so because of that, they're being persecuted and like by the royal family, they're being hunted down. And so when she got sick as a kid, her family found out that she had this, and they thought she passed it because she started pretending like nothing happened, but it's because she didn't want them to know that she had this nightmare inside of her. And now we're in like the present day, and she meets these other people who also are like magic users, and they're like working together for like a heist basically. And so I don't want to say like much more about it than that, but I just thought this book was very unique. I loved the writing style. I loved the characters. I'm really into the romance. I'm also like not opposed to a potential love triangle that may or may not happen. I just find it so fascinating. So I'm very excited. I have book 2 on hold, but there is quite a wait list. I had quite a wait list to get book 1, and I don't remember what the second book is called, but I'm excited to hopefully read that at some point this year and close out this duology. I also love that it's a duology, because some series are so long that I'm like, I'm never going to get to the other books in time to have it all still fresh in my mind, but love that book. Another book that I gave 5 stars this month was Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This is a contemporary romance, and this is the first romance book I think I've ever read that has a plus size hero, like not a like chiseled 6-pack abs guy. I don't know, but I loved it. So the premise is there's this woman who is a meteorologist in Seattle, and it's what she's always wanted to do, but her life is kind of miserable because her boss is also like the head meteorologist, and then her boss is getting divorced or is divorced from this guy who runs the station, and so everyone is kind of having a terrible time, and she, the main character, and this sports reporter decide that they should try to get their bosses to get back together because life was better when their bosses were together, and through doing so they like fall in love with each other. But it's very cute, it's very like hijinksy, which is fun, also like kind of unrealistic, but I loved it. I thought it was very sweet. I also liked that it was like kind of a dual romance, because we get the romance that's like the first person romance between this girl and the sports reporter, but then you also get the romance between the other two, like the second chance romance, if you will. And I liked seeing that develop, even though you only get that really from like the third person perspective. I thought that was very sweet. I should also say the guy is a single dad. There's that. But I love this book. I thought it was so sweet. I was obsessed. And I don't know, I loved, his name's Russell, was the hero. I loved him. One of my favorite heroes I've ever read. Another book I gave 5 stars, which kind of surprised me. I talk about this in my vlog that I recently did. The next 2 books I talked about in that vlog, so I won't go too far in depth. But Hurricane Season by Fernanda Melchor, which is a literary fiction book set in Mexico, and the premise is that there's a witch in this village. The witch has been murdered, and throughout the book you're trying to figure out like what happened. This book is very dark, it's very like gory, it's very violent. It's a lot of things that I would not think that I would like, but I ended up really liking it. But each section is from the perspective of a different villager, or like a village person in this community, and with each perspective you learn more about the witch, you learn more about the community, you learn more about the other characters that you've already gotten their perspective that you didn't know before. And I loved it. I thought it was so well done, and it was just like peeling back an onion, because every time you get more and more layers. Loved it. Absolutely, like a book that I should not, well, in theory, like wouldn't be something that I would like, and I loved it so much. So I think if you can see past some of the like more violent graphic details of this book, if that's the kind of thing that bothers you, like maybe look into what's in it and see for yourself if you can handle it. But I think a lot of it is just like getting through some like really mucky, nasty humanity things to see like this bigger picture. I thought it was so well done. I really liked it. And the last 5-star that I have to talk about is The White Boy Shuffle by Paul Beatty, which I also talk about in that vlog. So The White Boy Shuffle is about this guy. It's a coming of age story. It's very funny, very satirical, but it's about this kid who is from a Black family, and he grew up living in San Diego, I think, in the suburbs. And then something happens and his family has to move into inner city Los Angeles, and it's about him like experiencing inner city life for the first time. He finds out that he can dunk in basketball, which makes him very cool. He develops these like different friend groups, and it's just him going through his life. And then ultimately the story is about how he ends up being like the spokesperson for the Black community, basically. That's like kind of what happens. And so you know that's what's going to happen, but from like the beginning. But it's him telling the story of how he gets there. And again, very funny, also kind of sad. Like there's a scene in this that made me cry. I don't know. I really enjoyed that book. I really enjoyed the writing style of it. I want to read more from Paul Beatty, because I think he has a couple other things. I think he had a book come out a few years ago, well, like a decade ago probably, that won the Booker. So I want to read that. But it's just like, a unique perspective that I've never read before. And then I've learned I like satire in books. So I don't know, I really enjoyed this one and I'm very glad that I finally read it. But this video has been far too long. That's it. Those are the 18 books that I read in May. Let me know in the comments down below if you read any of these books and how you felt about them. Also, let me know what your favorite thing that you read in May is. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. If you would like to, you can subscribe to my channel. I do try to post 2 videos every week, and I will see you in the next one.